In order not to miss the next story, subscribe to the channel below this video, and don't forget to give your likes and share your opinions in the comments. Friends, today we are waiting for a very interesting story, very long and with an unpredictable ending. Get comfortable and we will begin. Hello Dima, are you there yet? I hope the sauna is well heated this time. We're going to be in 5 minutes. Cheerfully said her husband Sveta. He looked at the phone and sank helplessly in his chair. Dima. Dima drummed in her temples. She called him Oleg Dima. Wrong number, I guess. That's how stupid she gave herself away. Oleg got up, picked up his old gym bag, and began to pack. Suddenly, his eyes fell on his son's toys. Stasik, what about him now? Oleg sank right to the floor and, clasping his head with his hands, began to sway side to side. Lump of something terribly unpleasant rose to his throat, and Oleg sobbed for the first time since his distant childhood, bitterly and tearfully, turning inside out his soul in a void with a hunchback of silent rooms. Oleg had met Svetlana 10 years earlier. Then he, a 24-year-old guy, arrived with his team on a call, a house on fire, Svetlana's home. Her parents, Antonina and Nikolai Malikov, were alcoholics, and the girl had had a hard, joyless life since childhood. Her mother did not take care of the house, preferring to work for a bottle with neighbors, weeding the vegetable garden and doing odd household chores. The father did nothing at all, just waited for his wife to bring him a drink before some simple snack. Often contented himself with a piece of stale bread to rancid lard, which people were not sorry to give the thin Balashiki, Svetlana's mother. Svetlana herself, while she was small, survived at the expense of pitiful neighbors who would pour half a liter of milk for a girl or put a bun or a cake in her hands. The most important holidays of the year for Svetlana were Christmas Eve and Easter. That's when the girl ate from the heart and still had time to stash a lot of treats for herself. On Christmas Eve, she begged her old neighbor for some cutie, distributed it among the yards, congratulating the neighbors on the holidays and getting something to bake, sweets, or even small money for it. On Easter, she went to the cemetery, and there too she was well served, stuffing the bag with a variety of food. And so the girl grew up. At school she studied badly. Teachers dragged her from class to class, knowing that with such parents any progress was out of the question. And then there was that terrible fire. Svetlana was 15 years old that day, and it was the perfect excuse for her parents to get drunk again. Sveta looked at the filth they had made in the kitchen, went to her room and fell asleep, trying not to listen to their yelling and swearing. Through sleep, she felt her head grow heavy. She could not breathe either, but the girl could not wake up either. And then Svetlana felt that she was flying somewhere and laughed happily, realizing that the terrible dream would not return, and now she would be easy and good. And the fireman who was carrying her in his arms, making his way through the fire and smoke, ran out into the yard and handed her over to the sleeping EMTs. Then rushed back into the house to help his comrades. Together they carried Svetlana's mother and someone else out, but they did not have time to go back for her father. The roof of the house collapsed, covering Nikolai Malikov, a long-time bitter drunkard. Svetlana's mother died in hospital, but she herself recovered surprisingly quickly. Svetlana already knew what happened and saw a young firefighter who saved her from a burning house, and even thanked him in a voice weak with worry. "My name is Sveta," she said, lying on a stretcher near the ambulance. "And I'm Oleg. Get well, Sveta." "You will be fine," Oleg said and stroked her hands. Several years have passed. One hot summer day, Oleg got out with his friends to the lake, where they liked to gather every weekend for a shashlik. The spring company was having a carefree time. Some were chasing a ball around the clearing, others were swimming. Some of the men came with their wives, and Velaka, Oleg's best friend, also took his sister, Alyanka. Oleg remembered her from all the girls, about 7 to 8 years old. Then Volodya's parents divorced, and her mother went away with her daughter, leaving her son with his father. And then recently, Alina came to visit her brother. Now she was a girl, and Oleg would never have recognized her at a chance meeting. "So how are you doing, Alina married?" he asked, walking along the beach with her. "No, I'm only 17. For some reason she looked at him frightened. "So, no boyfriend either. Such a beauty must have a crowd of admirers running after her." Oleg joked, and the girl smiled embarrassed. "I do not need anyone, except—" "And you are married, Oleg?" "Single, all looking for my soulmate, and cannot find it, you know." "What if you meet her somewhere? You tell her I'm waiting for her." "Okay, I will." Alina suddenly looked at him and smiled so easily and simply that he was even taken aback. She touched his shoulder with her hand and said, "You will meet her very soon." And Alina did not have time to finish, because a slender, beautiful girl in a wet swimsuit rushed to his neck. She laughed merrily, kissed him, and shouted, "Oleg, Oleg, Olezhenka, how glad I am to see you." "I am Light," she lied. "Remember, you saved me from the fire." "Light?" Oleg slightly pulled away from the girl and looked at her face. "It's really you. Well, gee, what have you become? And what are you doing here?" But the light, without answering, again hung on his neck. Oleg embraced her wet, cool body and felt the fire of passion carry him away. In that very minute, he lost his head and forgot everything. Alyanka, standing beside him, helplessly lowered her head and stepped behind the trees, and then quickly ran away, not holding back bitter sobs. Her brother found her half an hour later. She was sitting on a fallen trunk of a tree, staring blankly into the distance. Volodya, unable to understand anything, took her by the arm and led her to where everyone was seated on a blanketed glade with all kinds of snacks. Light sat next to Oleg. She wore a t-shirt that did not cover her long legs at all, and chatted merrily with everyone, as if she had known them for 100 years. An hour later, Oleg and Svetlana, having said goodbye, drove away, and Alyanka cried again, hiding in the back seat of her brother's car, while Oleg plunged into incredible love with the reckless and resilient Stetka. She told him that after the hospital she was sent to an orphanage, where she graduated from high school and then trained as a messer. And now she is back in her hometown. "Where do you live?" "At a friend's house for now. I've only been here a week, actually. But I've been in the massage parlor for 2 days, can you believe it? I woke up this morning and decided to go to the lake. Haven't been out there in years. And I see you coming. Well, I could not resist." Oleg kissed the girl, knocking her over on the pillow. "And I'm insanely happy to see you, Sveta." That same evening, when Sveta went to the shower, Oleg called his mother. "I want you to please Mom. I fell in love, and I want to get married." "Son, well, that's just great." "And who is she?" "I know her." "Well, how can I tell you? Remember, I told you that I saved a girl from the fire a few years ago. That's her, Svetlana. I ran into her today by chance." "How?" "We met today, and you're already in love? Are you in a hurry, son? And if I'm not mistaken, you said her family was a heavy drinker." "That's right, Mom. That's right. But Sveta, she's different. She's like that. How can I tell you? Olesho, listen. I never interfered in your life, and I even bought an apartment in another town, so I have less reason to annoy you. But now, I still want to ask you, are you in no hurry? After all, you don't know this girl at all." "I do, Mother, I do. She's just delightful." Oleg hung up the phone and hurried into the shower, where Sveta was splashing merrily and calling him, laughing with happiness. A month later, they were married, and Sveta became the absolute mistress of his house. Oleg loved his wife very much, pampered her, always helped with household chores, and often freed him from cleaning and cooking, doing, and meat. All the more so since he worked in shifts and regularly had free days. But Sveta worked from 8 to 8, and by the time she came home from work, dinner was ready, and she had only to thank her husband for his efforts with affection and tenderness. When Svetlana became pregnant, Oleg simply did not leave her side, and taking her son in his arms, felt that now he could move mountains. Barely 9 months old Stasik, Svetlana began talking about his return to work. "I'm tired of sitting at home all the time," she groused. "Stasik has been on artificial feeding for a long time. That's what I should do with him. Tell me, let's work it out somehow, but I can work in shifts instead of a full week, so that I can alternate with you. And if I can't do it sometimes, we can hire a nanny." "Come on, Svet. Well, what do you think? Who will replace the child's mother? Other mothers to 3 years to sit and garden child, afraid to give it to someone that is not going to hurt him. And you say, a nanny. Oh, I beg you, let these drunks at least until school sit with their offspring. And I do not want, look, I gained weight, my figure floated, and I want to be beautiful. Do not make up, you look beautiful." Sveta looked at herself in the mirror with satisfaction, but then, having realized, continued to grovel and persuade her husband. And he gave up. Well, at least Stasik grew up problem-free, healthy child, and did not cause trouble for his parents. Time passed. Stasik already went to kindergarten. He grew up and became quick-witted and curious. The teachers praised him for his diligence and kindness and never complained about the child. But one day, a teacher called Svetlana and asked if they had forgotten to pick up their son from kindergarten. "I have not been able to reach you or your husband for 2 hours. Of course, I understand everything, but my working day is long over, and I also have a family and children, and I am forced to be here with your son. And you understand what kind of mental trauma it can be for children to see that their parents don't need him." Svetlana hastened to assure her that she would solve the problem right away and called Oleg, but his number was unavailable. Svetlana glanced at the missed calls and bit into her cube. The tutor called 17 times. There were calls from unknown numbers, and 3 more from Volodya, Oleg's friend. What did he want? She thought indignantly. For some reason, it was Volodya of all Oleg's friends who disliked her the most. But where was Oleg? Okay, it was her fault. She left the phone on silent mode. But why was he unavailable? Svetlana called a cab and drove to the garden, all the way trying to call home the same. At the kindergarten, wanting to avoid additional news, Svetlana apologized and slipped a large bill into the pocket of the teacher. "I wanted to be so indignant, but I changed my mind." Silently, she gave the child back and went away satisfied that she had been paid for her time, even if it was illegal. At least now, she could stop at the grocery store on her way home and pick up all sorts of goodies and delicacies for her family, who cared less about the law. After all, her labor rights had been violated too, and no one would think to compensate her. Thinking this way, the educator headed home, and Svetlana, after putting Stas in the car, gave the cab driver her home address. At that moment, Volodya called again. "Hello," answered Svetlana, and she heard the man's trembling voice. "Svet, here's the thing. Oleg is badly burned. Badly burned. He was on shift, but the fire you know. He was pinned by a beam. While it was removed, he's alive," gasping with despair, Sveta asked. Yes, but Sveta, he's in a serious condition. Oleg spent several months in the hospital. His sturdy body withstood the terrible burns. Only his broken leg, crushed by a crumbling beam, wasn't healing well. The bones had healed, but the limp remained. Oleg's face and shoulder were also covered in terrible scars. The left side of his face was almost intact, but the right side was. The doctors managed to save his vision, but the corner of his lower eyelid was stretched down. When all the bandages were removed, Svetlana, seeing what her husband had become, only groaned. He understood her exclamation and frowned. But she immediately picked up, began to reassure him, and promised that he would still love him as before. When Oleg was discharged from the hospital, he received a disability and did not want to leave the apartment. Like a hunted animal, he languished in the four walls. But when he made up his mind and went out into the street, he was met with curious or mercifully frightened stares from passers-by. But the worst thing was that his wife, whom he loved so much, had estranged herself from him, had become a stranger and unavailable. She apparently did not want to go to bed with him, turned away so as not to see his disfigured face, squeamishly avoided kisses. And Oleg often left her alone, sitting all night on the balcony, smoking a pack of strong cigarettes, barely a line. And then this call. How long Oleg sat, wrapped his head in his hands, he did not know exactly. And then he still found the strength to get up and gather his things. The phone rang again. Yes, Oleg answered his wife's call. Oleg, honey, I'm going to be late today. The director is getting everyone together for a big meeting. He wants to expand our center. And then I have 2 more appointments. You pick up Stasik and Sad. Okay. Sveta, where are you? What are you doing? I just told you at work. In the sauna. With Dima. Oleg, where are you from? Who are you? If you don't come home now, I'll come to you myself. And then you'll know what I can do. You got 10 minutes. Time's up. I'll be there. And there she is. Built, beautiful, young. Standing in front of him, proudly in her head. I'm sorry, Oleg. I do not know who or what they told you, but I was there by chance. I just met my friends, and it was nothing. You're drunk. You're also a real slut. What? How dare you? What do you know about me? Poor invalid. What do you know? Am I supposed to live on your pension? Be poor? You're welcome. I love the good life. Understand? It's you, Kali, who should stay home. And I'm young and beautiful. I want to live. I'm filing for divorce and selling this apartment. I'm moving out of here. And where will I live? Are you crazy? At his Dinma. And I'm not giving you my son. I'll raise him myself. You'll have no time to take care of him anyway. Well, no, you won't get a son. Yes. Well, then do not forget to take it from the garden. Oleg picked up his bag and left the apartment, not listening to the screams in the traitorous wife. Oleg, come back. I can't pick up Stas today. Oleg. Several years had passed. Oleg lived in a remote Tato village, worked in the woods, deftly handling a dragger. Sometimes, substituting for some lumberjack, he took a saw in his hands. But his sore leg did not allow him to walk long in the woods, and he went back to the tractor. He had a lot of strength in his arms. Heavy physical activity made Oleg grow big in the shoulders. His torso became simply gigantic, and the rusted beard, under which he hid his scars, added a good 10 years to his age. There were few women in the wilderness, and those that were afraid of the sullen, stern Oleg, and that suited him just fine. With his mother, Oleg called constantly, and knew that 3 years ago, Sveta brought his son to his mother, asked to look after him for a week, but it was lost. A couple of times she called, asking how things were, and whether Stasik could stay with his grandmother a little longer. And then she stopped calling. Several times Oleg went to visit his son, and the boy did not recognize him at first, and then he waited impatiently for his father to visit him again. One day Oleg got a call from his mother saying that Stas was sick and was in the hospital. How is he? What is wrong with him? Why didn't you tell me? I'll buy a plane ticket right away. Oleg got agitated. No, don't. Calm down. Everything is already good. Stasik is home. He was in the hospital 2 weeks ago. I just did not want to bother you, Mom, but really, I did it on my own. And wait, don't interrupt, please, Oleg. You see, we did a bunch of tests and accidentally found out that Stas is not your son. He can't be yours by blood. Mom, are you sure Oleg was literally suffocating? Absolutely. I did from SDNA. Stas and I are not related. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep quiet and deceive you. You should know that, and I'm sure you'll make the right decision. Oh, Mom, I can't break up with him. That's a smart girl. And what you and I know, let it remain our secret, son. Oleg was just stunned. He thought he had already blotted out his past, and now it was back in front of him. For a few weeks he was not himself, and did not notice how all the other loggers enthusiastically discussed something, gathering here and there. It was only when the local logger Arkasha asked him if he had seen the new doctor assigned to their outpatient clinic that he realized what had shaken their crew so badly. No, I hadn't seen what. Pretty broad, I'll tell you that. Our people had been beating up on her since day one, and she was a rock. Midia went to her a couple of days ago. He wanted to feel her up. So she took him so hard that she almost took his life, and then quietly treated all the bruises and pick up with her. Oleg laughed. Well, what's your business? And still a good woman. If I have an excuse, I'll look at this Amazon. The occasion came a few days later. All lumberjacks on sites should pass routine medical examination and to make a couple of inoculations. At the appointed hour, and Oleg entered the office of the strict doctor. The woman was indeed beautiful, and even her glasses did not spoil it, emphasizing the correct facial features. Well, hello, Oleg, she said, and stepped towards him. Do not tell me that you do not recognize me. Alyonka. Oleg groaned and immediately turned away. Redness rushed into his face. He had forgotten about his scars and eyes, and now he remembered again. It's good to see you, he muttered. How is Volodya? I'm fine. Alyona quickly examined him, gave him injections, and Oleg left the office without even saying goodbye to her. He just did not want her pity. But late at night, there was a knock at the door of his house. Oleg opened and saw Elena again. Why did you come? You see what I have become. What do you want? She looked up at him, eyes filled with tears. I want you to let me love you. I want to be with you. I want to bear you sons. No, go away. Oleg, go away. I don't believe it. I don't believe you can love someone like me. What do you need me for? Oleg took the woman by the shoulders and pushed her out the door. Autumn did not break up and rushed around the house, and in the same way he rushed around the house of Oleg. For half an hour, he could not calm down, and finally decided to go to Olenia and explain himself to her. He opened the door, took a step out of frozen in place. Alina stood with her back to the wall, her face exposed to the rain and wind, crying, unable to hold back an attack of grief and pain. Oleg picked her up in his arms, carried her into the house, and began to warm her face and palms with his kisses. He begged for his forgiveness, and she, hot to respond to his caresses, repeating that she loved him. She had loved him since childhood and would never give him up to anyone else. 3 years had passed. Oleg's house was now large and spacious. His friends helped him to rebuild an unsightly house, and Oleg's large family now lived in a real mansion. Alina insisted that Oleg's mother and Stasik move in with them. The boy needs a father and his mother needs a son, she said, and Oleg was happy to move them in. Soon Alina gave her husband twins, a girl and a boy. This is us making up for lost years. Oleg laughed happily. No trace of his sternness remained, and his house was always hospitable to all guests. But one day an unexpected guest came to him. I want to see my son, said Svetlana. She stood before Oleg, aged and swollen, looking at him with cloudy eyes. He was gone. He had gone to town with his mother to buy presents for the holiday. What holiday? I am his mother. Oh, you mother. It's Stas' birthday, remember? Oh yeah, that's right. But since I'm not the mother, you're not the father either. Got it? Svetlana tried to hurt her ex-husband. And I know, but it doesn't change anything. Stas is my son, even if not by blood, but by destiny. And you can't change that, okay? Now get out, you disgrace. Oleg closed the door in front of her. Svetlana stood a little longer and shrugged her shoulders. Why had she really come here? The woman took a bottle out of her pocket, took a few sips, and went to the station. A train was due to leave soon to take her home. Where was her home, though? She no longer knew. Friends, what do you think of this story? Share it faster. Faster share it with me. I'm very interested. It is quite difficult to read the story, as you noticed a lot of dialogue and wanted to convey emotion, speaker, and intonation. If you liked my work for you, please support this video with a like. It will be the best thank you for me, really, and will also help the channel grow and develop. I like today's story a lot. First of all, the dashingly twisted plot, and secondly, the writing style. I hope you had fun listening to it with me. And with you was me, your narrator. And by tradition, without saying goodbye. See you tomorrow in a new video on Channel of Dramas of Destiny. And there, believe me, will be something very interesting.